Number 8. Kaylee Muthart. Kaylee Muthart was in her late teens when she began experimenting with methamphetamine in her hometown of Anderson, South Carolina. She tried to quit several times, but the highly addictive and easily accessible drug kept pulling her back in. After injecting meth one evening in 2018, Kaylee completely lost touch with reality. She could no longer tell what was real and what wasn't, and she began to hallucinate outside a church. Kaylee began to think that the world was ending and believed she could somehow save it if she gouged her eyes out with her bare hands. Members from the nearby church found her screaming on the ground in pain. She was so high, it took several grown men to subdue her. Paramedics gave Kaylee a tranquilizer and flew her to a hospital, where she stayed for several weeks. She was left permanently blind and had no choice but to adjust to it. In addition to receiving treatment for her physical injuries, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She finally started receiving care for the issues that had most likely caused her to self-medicate with street drugs in the first place. After returning home, Kaylee began learning how to read Braille. By 2020, she had mastered a handful of basic tasks like cooking, caring for pets, and doing laundry. That same year, she received prosthetic eyes that gave her the confidence to feel like herself again. At that time, Kaylee was focused on finishing her high school diploma, but she also became a vocal advocate for discouraging young people from abusing street drugs. She even found love, proving that it's possible to carry on even in the face of unthinkable adversity. Number 7. Jacqueline Ades. A number of years ago, Jacqueline Ades from Maricopa County, Arizona, signed up for a dating website for people seeking wealthy partners. She met with a man who wasn't interested in a second date, but she refused to take no for an answer and began to stalk him relentlessly. Over the next 10 months, Ades sent the victim over 159,000 text messages. One day in 2017, she showed up uninvited at his house and was escorted off the property by police. However, she continued to escalate her behavior. In addition to messaging the man non-stop, her correspondence took an increasingly gruesome and sadistic tone. Ades told the man that she wanted to wear his flesh, devour his organs, and make sushi from his kidneys and chopsticks from his hand bones. She took things to a disturbing new level in 2018 when she broke into the victim's house while he was out of the country. The man spotted Ades on his home surveillance footage and called the police, who discovered her inside taking a bath as if she lived there. They also found a butcher knife in the front seat of her car. After missing multiple court dates for criminal charges related to her stalking and other bizarre behavior, Ades was held at the Maricopa County Jail. During a press conference, she told reporters that she believed a jury would find her innocent and would want her victim to marry her. She also rejected a plea deal that would have brought the case to a much quicker end. As the interview went on, her behavior became even more strange. Ades began to make completely outlandish claims, including that Walt Disney had abducted her as a child and that she was a member of the Illuminati. She was ultimately deemed incompetent to stand trial. Several court-appointed psychiatrists deemed the woman's mental health as unrestorable, and her case was dismissed. In many instances, a person accused of a crime would see this as a better outcome than facing a jury, but Ades insisted on having her case heard. That never happened, and she was sent to a mental health facility with plans for her parents to move her to Florida to live with them. At the very least, it got her away from her victim and ensured that she would receive continued supervision from people with her best interests at heart. Number 6. Matthew Williams. 34-year-old Matthew Williams was a violent convict who had been released from prison just weeks earlier when he went on a massive drunk binge in South Wales in 2014. Shortly after meeting a young woman named Karis Yam at a pub, he took her to his friend's house, where he drank alcohol, smoked cannabis, and injected a strong amphetamine called mephedrone, known on the streets as MCAT or Meow Meow. A little while later, Williams claimed he was hearing voices and said that everything looked like a negative photograph. After leaving the friend's house, Williams took Yem to the hotel he was living in with plans to call her a cab from there, but he convinced her to go to his room with him. He wasn't supposed to have female guests based on the conditions of his prison release, but nobody was supervising him closely enough to catch him breaking the rules. During the early morning hours, staff members heard a woman screaming. They rushed into the room to find Williams eating Yem's face in a mannerism they later described as Hannibal Lecter style. They called the police, and the first officer to arrive on scene found Williams crouched over his victim. He still appeared to be eating her face and refused to comply with the officer's orders, so she used a stun gun to subdue him. Yem was obviously murdered, and Williams died shortly after being taken into custody for reasons that remain unclear. A forensic examiner found no evidence that Williams actually ate his victim, but Yem was covered in horrific injuries. The murder left the young woman's grief-stricken loved ones outraged, wondering why Williams had been released from prison with no medication, mental health treatment, or any oversight whatsoever when he was a repeat offender with a disturbing track record. Many believe that if he had been properly supervised, Yem might still be alive today. Number 5. Charlene Thompson. In 2018, an argument broke out at the home of 61-year-old Cincinnati resident Charlene Thompson, and as a result, a woman wound up hospitalized with severe burns to her back and arm. Thompson allegedly poured hot grease on the victim during the disagreement and held her at knife point before allowing her to leave. Authorities charged Thompson with assault, and at the time, she was also wanted on 2 outstanding warrants stemming from unrelated incidents. Thompson already had a lengthy criminal record that included several prior assault cases. At her arraignment, her lawyer said that she struggled with mental health issues and had been treated for paranoid schizophrenia in the past. A neighbor told local station WLWT that Thompson was a good woman, but that she had likely stopped taking her medication and flipped out. The acquaintance also said that the suspect had tried pouring hot grease on someone else during an argument about a year earlier. Thompson's friend described the situation as reflective of her need for better sustained treatment. The judge initially held the troubled woman on a $50,000 bond, but what happened after that is a mystery. Number 4. Christopher Plaskon. In 2014, Connecticut high school student Christopher Plaskon snapped and stabbed Maren Sanchez to death after she turned down the classmates' prom proposal. The young man willingly gave himself up to police when they arrived at the scene, stating, "I did it. Just arrest me." While Plaskon awaited the murder trial from behind bars, he wrote his father a letter claiming that he killed Sanchez because he heard voices telling him to do so. His defense attorneys considered entering an insanity plea on his behalf before he decided to plead no contest in 2016. He was ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison. In a civil lawsuit, the victim's parents accused the school district of failing to take proper action. Apparently, their daughter told guidance counselors months before her murder that Plaskon was threatening to take his own life. He was suspended for a week and continued to self-harm after he returned, perhaps because he needed mental help rather than punishment. The lawsuit alleges that Plaskon's need for intervention was obvious and that he committed acts of self-harm in public. Sadly, the signs were missed, and his behavior escalated to the point where one life has been taken and another has been ruined. In 2021, Plaskon sued the prison system for denying him adequate medical care for a stomach ailment. Unfortunately, judging by the apparent difficulty of accessing basic physical care, it's safe to assume that he's not receiving sufficient mental health treatment. Number 3. Robin Ford. In 2013, 51-year-old Robin Ford was working as a substitute teacher at an elementary school in Deltona, Florida, when she suddenly began rambling about the FBI and the CIA. She also reportedly said that she planned to call the US president on the phone, but instead called the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. A deputy came to the school to speak with Ford, who claimed that she could hear people yelling and cursing outside the classroom. She said that she couldn't see anyone, but that she could hear them, and the voices prompted her to call the sheriff for help. Ford underwent further questioning and said that she had called the CIA and the FBI in the past because she believed drug dealers were following her around and swearing at her. The voices also made her believe that someone was trying to steal her identity. A security guard at the school told the responding deputy that Ford had accused her of using her walkie-talkie to broadcast the voices. Just to be sure that nothing actually happened, the school's principal spoke with the students, who said that they didn't hear any altercations or concerning noises. When authorities challenged Ford's reality and suggested that she may need mental help, she denied having any mental issues and insisted that things like this have happened to her in the past. She said that she had also called the sheriff's office on prior occasions to report her concerns, but the agency found no records of her doing so. Ford became very upset that nobody believed her and argued that she had personally spoken with the President of the United States about the strange things going on in her life. She said that the people responsible for the voices had followed her from Florida to Georgia. Needless to say, she was permanently removed from the school. After law enforcement determined that she posed no dangers to herself or others, they called her a cab and sent her on her way. Number 2. Alexis. On September 16, 2013, 34-year-old Alexis entered the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. with a loaded gun and opened fire. By the time police killed him in a shootout an hour later, he had fatally shot 12 people and injured several others. Alexis was a military veteran and a computer technician who had been contracted by the government to work at the Navy Yard. Prior to the massacre, none of his co-workers noticed any signs that he might be planning to do something violent. The only mishap he experienced at the job was a performance issue that was addressed weeks earlier. He bought a Remington shotgun and the hacksaw he used to shorten the barrel the following day. In the wake of the shooting, the FBI revealed that Alexis was plagued by delusions that the government was controlling him with low-frequency radio waves. A search of his devices revealed that he was convinced the mind control had been going on for 3 months. As he descended further into madness, he started to believe that the waves were being transmitted through the hotel ceiling to cause insomnia. Before committing the horrific act of violence, Alexis etched the words, "End the torment," into the barrel of his gun. He entered the Navy Yard planning to die that day and wrote in one of his computer files that he had accepted this fate. Alexis had sought treatment at the VA for sleeplessness, but nobody thought to screen his mental health. In a heartfelt statement, Alexis's mother said that she doesn't know why her son did what he did, and that she'll never be able to ask him why. She went on to say that Aaron is now in a place where he can no longer do harm to anyone, and for that, I am glad. Number 1. Barbara Arellano. In March 2016, police in Santa Fe, New Mexico noticed a speeding vehicle blowing through red lights and flying past other cars. Officers pursued the driver, sparking a chase that ended only when the Toyota RAV4 crashed into a pickup truck. A naked woman got out of the vehicle and ran around screaming until officers subdued her and covered her with a tarp. As they handcuffed the suspect, she started yelling, "Jehovah, Jehovah." She also kept trying to spit on the cops, forcing them to put a mask over her face. The suspect was identified as 51-year-old Barbara Arellano. When the police asked her why she was naked, she replied, "I got hot." She also allegedly said that she had been partying like a damn dog and admitted to drinking whiskey and using pills, as well as taking heroin. Arellano was charged with driving under the influence, aggravated fleeing of law enforcement officer, reckless driving, and battery of a peace officer. When she got to jail, she allegedly asked for more drugs and alcohol. She was released a few days later on a $10,000 bond, but the outcome of the case remains unclear. If you had a close friend who was clearly losing their grip on reality but said they were fine, would you trust their word and leave it alone, or would you continue to push the issue, knowing it might put your friendship on the line? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.